Ruslan. Patreon exclusive.
I'm going to go to a couple passages that I think may be helpful. Ephesians 2. As for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and of the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us also lived among them at one point, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. This passage implicates that we are by nature deserving wrath, and it is our desires and thoughts in the flesh, the cravings of the flesh. James kind of echoes this. So if we go to James 1, when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. Verse 14. Each person is tempted when they are dragged away by what? Their own evil desire and enticed. So they're dragged away when their own evil desire, and then they're enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. Clearly there's a spirit of the air, but I think most music is reflective of the soundtrack that we're living. We're living a certain way, and therefore there's this soundtrack. And then there's people that look at that and live through it vicariously. So like if we go back to like NWA or the genesis of gangster rap, they were talking about stuff that was already happening in the society in South Central, except they were putting sauce on top of it. It was a bit hyperbolic. And so people were listening to that, and because it reflected a reality that people from that area were experiencing. And then there were folks that didn't experience it, but for them, it was like watching a scary movie. It was like watching something vicariously through them, right? There's this dual consumption happening. Kids coming from that environment, really living some of that or seeing some of that, listening to that because it reflected a reality. And then there was other people who were just living vicariously through it. I would venture off to say that the kids living vicariously through it weren't then going and shooting rando police officers in the suburbs, right? Like F the police didn't cause a kid in Oklahoma or Nebraska to go and there's no spirit in the F the police song to go and do that. However, if you're already on that energy, that music can then become that soundtrack to then go and potentially make you go do some wild stuff. And there were people that definitely listening to gangster rap music that were getting hyped up to go do drive-bys. Like that was for sure happening. I think that most times when people are talking about spirits, they're removing intentionality. That's the issue, is they're removing the intentionality. And it seems like the thing that we all weave together here was, what is the intentionality of the person making the art, and what is the intentionality of the person consuming the art, right? If the person making the art is intentionally trying to make something dark, and then the person consuming the art is already on that dark energy, well then yes. And I see it with the Mark of the Beast stuff, but it's just, to me, it's the silly notion that you can get tricked into doing something. That like you could be pursuing Jesus, loving Jesus, reading your Bible every day, and then like Jay-Z drops 444 and you throw on the Jay-Z album, and then all of a sudden you go, I got a spirit in me because I listen to 444, but I'm listening and I'm praying. Just like you can't accidentally take the Mark of the Beast, I don't think you could accidentally let a demon in. I think you have to be seeking that out. I think you got to be really dabbling in some stuff and seeking some stuff out. And there's obviously things that like we shouldn't consume. Like I'm not consuming WAP. I've never heard WAP. I have zero desire to listen to WAP. I don't know what WAP sounds like. I've never heard of it. I don't even know what the beat sounds like. Like I've just never heard of it because I know exactly what that is. That is pornographic music. I have zero desire to consume pornographic music, so I don't know what WAP sounds like. And so I think there are some things that are completely off limits and out of bounds. However, that isn't the stuff that's usually getting attacked. It's usually the stuff that's just kind of like, you listen to Kendrick, that Kendrick has spirits. And it's like, stop it. Like, no, he doesn't. Like, you don't know. So I think that's where it gets very, very bizarre. And sometimes the things that are most obviously demonic, we actually ignore. 60% of pastors have admitted to looking at pornography regularly, 60%. Man, if that's not demonic, like if there's not spirits attached to that, right? So it almost seems like we're always ignoring the massive elephant in the room while going and like wanting to argue over like a Jay-Z lyric. Like it's like what? Like fam, this is there's like real things people are dealing with that I definitely think carry spiritual implications. Watching two people have intercourse, I think definitely carries some type of like something is going on there, right? Like something is happening spiritually there between them, and people are consuming this. But like you're concerned about like a Jay-Z song. Like really, like the Jay-Z song is going to do you in, right? Like, or the Weeknd has a song on the radio and you're just riding to soccer practice, and so you're riding to soccer practice, Jay-Z song comes on, or a Weeknd song comes on, and you think you're just gonna get tricked into walking away from Jesus and renouncing the faith and losing your salvation. Like, if you're literally ignoring the massive elephants in the room in our society. So let me go to my brother Truth. He just threw his hand up.
Nobody ever talk about the spirits of pornography and stuff. And man, folks are struggling in silence with pornography. I think you hit the nail on the head. The church has a bad habit of like the real struggles that people have, the real things that are really messing up, like the church, like pride, like pornography, you know, those things, lust, sex outside of marriage, all those different things. Like they fumble the bag on those things.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
like the stuff that's just like such low hanging fruit that's really like, and this is, I'll give my own testimony. Like even as a early Christian, like first coming into the faith, I didn't have to be told like, yeah, you need to be careful what you listen to. Mm-hmm. I just kind of knew it. You know what I mean? Right. It was like, yeah, this isn't talking about the stuff that I'm reading in the Bible that I should be having in my mind. And there were simple scriptures that said what's the things are good, true, of good report, pure, all these different things that said to think on.
Truth, not to cut you off, or even, and this might be controversial, but even, hey, this song from this artist who wrote a love song about his wife may not be good for me to listen to when I'm away from my wife, or I'm going through a hard season, or whatever, or while I'm single. But this song, in the context of me and my wife hanging out, or me and my wife making love, may be totally appropriate, right? So like even that right there can be different. Now I'm not listening to a song about like bagging random chicks down while I'm with my wife, right? But there are songs, like I think me and my wife enjoy quite a few songs written by Prince about his wife, and that's totally different than an R. Kelly song. You know what I mean? Like about being a Pied Piper, right? Like totally different context, totally different intent, totally different source, so on and so forth. So I think even in that, like there are songs that might be appropriate for like a love song can be appropriate for a specific season in a specific context, and not when someone's isolated or going through it, and listening to hyper-erotic music on their own.
Yeah, I think the equating mainstream music to like people treat the mainstream music, people listening to that, like how they should be treating people watching porn in secret. And that's the bigger issue. I think you hit the nail on the head. That's all I want to say.
Yeah. I mean, even to dig a little deeper, like, man, there's kids right now taking out hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans that they'll never be able to get rid of. Right? And now the government's in your pocket for 30% of your revenue, more or less when you factor in the interest, for decades. Like there's stories of people that are retiring and they can't get their SSI benefits because they have student loans, and those student loans are government insured, meaning that's the only type of debt you can't put into a bankruptcy. And there's people like actually with student loan debt that they will never get rid of. They can have hospital bills, they can get sick, all these other things happen, but they will never get rid of those student loans because our system is designed in a way where the government federally insures that. And the burden that could place on young married couples, young entrepreneurs, young families, where 20 to 30 to 40% of your revenue is going out to pay out these student loans. Like that's a real thing that I think really keeps people in the cycle of poverty. And we know the number one reason for divorce is money fights and money problems. And so like, is that a spirit? Is that an institutional conspiracy? Is that systemically, institutionally wrong? I think it is. I think there's something there with that, the fact that someone can't get a loan or a grant to start a business, but that you'll give them 6 figures in debt that they will never be able to get rid of. That's 18-year-old. That's kind of wild. We talk about pornography. How about the fact that like we're seeing the first drop in life expectancy, and especially amongst men, right? Like we're literally seeing a life expectancy decline for the first times in generations. Mental health issues, suicide is on the rise. All these different things are happening, and that's not spiritual. So, and you're concerned about Jay-Z. That's what I'm saying. You're concerned about that. Like, I don't know. I just think there's so many bigger fish to fry, and we're concerned about like spirits and music and rap music or in country music, as Lizzie pointed out. I'm just so perplexed by the lack of just scales on what is actually a priority to address as a church.
Yeah, it'd be one thing if you were talking to like somebody who was new to the faith. Like I've dealt with a lot of people in the campus ministry, and they're younger people, and so like a lot of them are just coming to Christ, and so they're kind of in a more of a what I would call like a season of extremes, where like some of them will have to for a season cut off the mainstream music because it does have a stronghold as far as like how they view things, how their emotions are shaped, It's their soundtrack. It was the soundtrack of a former life that they're no longer in. So they're at a very early state of shifting. So a lot of that stuff still plays a huge role in it. But it's not because of like spirits. It's just because, when you're becoming to be more spiritually minded versus carnally minded, those emotions can really jack you up. And I've seen a lot of Christians who were really struggling with, having like this carnal mind because they kept early on in their faith, they kept the like mainstream music and the messages just weren't healthy. Just like the passage that we both read, like those thoughts you have to kind of go through a season of extreme. I think early on, I think maybe most of us took the wrong extreme and was breaking CDs and getting rid of stuff. So maybe like some of us went too extreme. I know I did. I only kept one CD. It was the Kendrick Lamar CD, but every other thing had to go. I think some of us went a little too extreme. We could have probably just put it up and just said, hey, I don't need that. And that's what I encourage people to do. I'm like, you don't have to break CDs if you don't feel led to. But I do think that seasons of extremes starting off when it comes to like, hey, I'm trying to live a delivered life. I can't do this. I can't do this because I have freedom in Christ now. I think that is healthy. But to say that like they're spirits, I think it just creates a boogeyman. It makes you afraid of Satan, and we're not supposed to be afraid of Satan as believers. We understand the enemy, but Satan isn't, like you said, he's not everywhere. He's not omnipresent. God is with us, and he's everywhere. And like if we have his spirit in us, we don't have to be afraid of Satan, but we can use wisdom and know like, oh, this is clearly satanic. I don't I don't want anything to do with this. I don't see anything redeemable about it. I reject it, and that's the end of it. I think all Christians get to a place where that's routine. It's routine. Outside of music, it makes sense in every other fashion. I think we all have to walk in that wisdom. So yeah,
and I think that's what you said is like that wisdom, right? Wisdom, walking that wisdom. But here's an example of something that I did that was really annoying. I did a video which I thought was a very thoughtful video about the secret lessons of Squid Game. And I give the context of what's going on in Korea and the debt problem and all this kind of stuff. And I repeatedly had Christians pulling up and saying, Christians shouldn't watch this show. And I was like, listen, I didn't ask you if we should watch this show. Like the video was not, should Christians watch Squid Game? The video was, you're here because you probably already watched Squid Game and you're trying to make sense of it. Here are some of the important themes in it that we may have missed about Squid Game. And here is a takeaway lesson from Squid Game that's tied into a biblical worldview, right? And so I think that was the point of that video, but it's like, we shouldn't watch Squid Game. It's like, fam, listen, you should be way more concerned about the amount of waste to someone's day-to-day life from binge watching Squid Game than you are to a spirit getting to them through Squid Game. Like for someone, the average person watches 30 hours of TV a week. Okay, the average person watches 30 hours of TV a week. If we factor in Netflix, we factor in all these things. So be concerned about that and like the compounding effect of like squandering so much of your time, and less concerned about Ruslan making a video about Squid Game. Right? Like that's not going to cause you to get tricked into walking away from Jesus and lose your salvation or take a spirit. What you watching 30 hours of TV a week, or whoever binging all this stuff, even if it's not Squid Game, like that actually has serious implications on your life. Right? Exactly. Like doing that indefinitely has real life limitations and is potentially going to keep you in the spirit it's the spirit of poverty, let alone take that into your marriage and then recreate that cycle of broken families and broken divorce and single parent households.
About that too.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it's
Proverbs.
like, again, the just scales. Like, we're here. We've already watched Squid Game. I don't need a comment saying we shouldn't watch Squid Game. That's already been done. Here's the takeaway from it to get us to think differently about it with an actual application point. Instead, it's like, yeah, maybe we should be talking about consumption as a whole for Christians. You know what I'm saying?
Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.
Patreon exclusive.
Hey, thank you so much for making it till the end of this video. Remember to hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. I wanted to tell you about a free upcoming course I am putting together at mastermyhabits.com. When you sign up right now, you'll be the first to be notified about the course. And in the meantime, you'll immediately get access to a playlist going over my journey on how I went from addiction to freedom forming habits. So make sure to hit that link in the description. I'll see you on the next video.